It was just after midnight on September 26, 1983. Somewhere deep inside a secret Soviet bunker, a man sat in front of a glowing screen, waiting for something he prayed would never appear. His name was Stanislav Petrov, a 44-year-old lieutenant colonel in the Soviet Air Defense Forces. That night, he was the duty officer at Serpukhov 15, the command center for the Soviet Union's nuclear early warning system. His job was terrifyingly simple, yet unimaginably heavy. If the system detected a nuclear launch from the United States, it was his duty to report it immediately to his superiors. That single report would trigger a chain reaction. Within minutes, the Soviet Union would launch its own missiles in retaliation. And then, the world would burn. At the height of the Cold War, tensions between the US and the Soviet Union were at their worst in decades. Only a few weeks earlier, the Soviets had shot down a South Korean passenger plane that had accidentally entered their airspace, killing 269 civilians, including an American congressman. The world was on edge. Every military alert, every radar ping could be the start of the end. So that night, in the silence of the bunker, Petrov sat surrounded by computers, red lights, and the hum of Cold War paranoia. And then it happened. A shrill alarm shattered the quiet. Red lights flashed across the room. On the massive screen in front of him, a word appeared in bold Russian letters. Launch detected. The computers had picked up what they believed to be a nuclear missile launch from the United States, heading straight toward the Soviet Union. The room froze. Sirens blared. Technicians turned to Petrov, waiting for his command. If the Americans had really fired, it meant nuclear war had begun. Petrov's training told him exactly what to do. Pick up the phone, confirm the alert, and pass the report up the chain of command. Within minutes, Soviet missiles would be launched in retaliation, striking cities across America and Europe. But something didn't feel right. Petrov's gut, that quiet voice of doubt, whispered that this didn't make sense. One missile? Just one? If the United States were truly attacking, they wouldn't send one missile. They would send hundreds, thousands, enough to wipe out the entire Soviet arsenal before it could fire back. Still, the alarm kept screaming. And then, seconds later, another word appeared on the screen. Second launch detected. Then a third, a fourth, a fifth. 5 nuclear missiles, according to the system, were now in the air, heading toward the Soviet Union. Every instinct screamed that it was real. Every training manual said to report it. And yet, Petrov hesitated. He had only minutes to decide. If he was wrong and did nothing, the Soviet Union could be obliterated. If he was wrong the other way and reported a false alarm, he could trigger World War II. He looked around the room. His subordinates were staring at him, wide-eyed, waiting for orders. The pressure was unbearable. The future of the entire planet hung in the balance. Petrov took a deep breath, and he made a choice. He picked up the phone, not to confirm the attack, but to report a system malfunction. He told his superiors it was a false alarm. It was a gamble that could destroy his career or save the world. Minutes passed like hours. No explosions, no missiles, no impact. Outside, the world remained silent. Petrov was right. The system had been wrong. Later, investigators discovered that the Soviet early warning satellites had mistaken the reflection of sunlight on high-altitude clouds for missile launches. It was a software error, one that came within seconds of starting nuclear war. Stanislav Petrov's calm, logical decision, made under unimaginable pressure, had stopped a catastrophe. He had saved hundreds of millions of lives. Maybe everyone alive today. But there was no celebration, no medals, no honors. He wasn't hailed as a hero. He was quietly reprimanded for not following the correct reporting procedure. The incident was classified, buried deep in Soviet archives for over a decade. Petrov returned to his modest apartment outside Moscow. He struggled with the weight of what had happened, knowing how close humanity had come to extinction. In interviews years later, he said he didn't feel like a hero. He said, I was just doing my job. He lived a quiet life until his death in 2017. For years, almost no one knew his name. But when his story finally became public, the world realized what he had done and how, on a single night in 1983, one man's courage and doubt, his refusal to blindly follow orders, had saved the human race. He didn't stop the Cold War. He didn't change history with politics or power. He did it by trusting his humanity more than the machines around him. Stanislav Petrov once said, "I had all the data I needed, except for one thing, proof that the world was ending. And without that proof, I refused to start it." In the end, history didn't remember him as a soldier. It remembered him as something far greater, the man who saved the world by doing nothing.